Again, I'd like to welcome you to today's Msdn webcast, Windows Presentation Foundation and Introduction. Today's presenter is Rob Relia. Rob is a lead program manager with the Avalon team with Microsoft. We will pause for just a moment while Rob takes the floor at TechEd 2006.
Right into the day here. My name is Rob Relia. I'm a lead program manager on the Windows Presentation Foundation team. I'm really excited to be here today to introduce Windows Presentation Foundation, I believe for the first time to a TechEd audience. It means that all the hard work we've done for the past several years have it's finally come to the point where we can share it with everybody, and we're this close to shipping. We've got a lot of exciting technology for you, a lot of exciting possibilities that I want to take you through today. Experience. Now, typically, when people build applications, they're choosing between a web application and a client application. And oftentimes, people choose web applications because of their reach and ease of deployment. But Windows applications have a lot of great things going for them. So one of our major goals was to overcome the problems with traditional Windows development, make it easier to deploy them, make it easier for them to run in the browser, make it easy for them to take advantage of the PC. So we're going ahead and providing a lot of great power in Windows to make it easier for you to go ahead and pick a great choice for building applications. So people have been moving up the scale of interactivity. They've moved from the base functionality. They've gone ahead and taken advantage of some more technologies in the web to get less latency. You don't need to navigate to every page when you want to get new data. So they're working on making better user experiences. And we've done a bunch of things. When you take advantage of the client PC, there's a bunch of things that you can improve the user experience even better, and I hope to show that to you today. Even if you look at some of the applications on the web today, looking at photo applications, looking at shopping applications, as you walk up that scale from baseline to richest, there's a lot of great things that you can do. I'm not going to demo Microsoft Max today, but you can go to Microsoft.com/Max and take a look at a really rich immersive photo sharing application. And Fluid, one of our partners, has worked with the North Face company to go ahead and build a great application to present their information in great new ways. So we're all about making it so that users have better user experiences. Today I'm going to talk about three main things. I'm going to try to stick to mostly demonstrations. I'm going to talk about building rich applications and all the new functionality that's available. And I'm also going to talk about how developers will be productive, what tools they can use to use WPF. And then I'll also talk about some of the new capabilities that we've added beyond just building normal applications, but where you can go ahead and add interactive media content, animations, and a number of other technologies. So when you build applications, it doesn't need to be a decision about should I build an application that runs in the web or runs in Windows. What we've done is we've made it so that you can go ahead and basically flip a switch in your application and choose between running in the web, in the browser, or running as a standalone application. This allows you to go ahead and basically present the information wherever your user would like the information. Now, if you want to go ahead and install the application, we've made it easier for applications to install and stay updated, whether you're in the browser or not. There's a bunch of great things you can go ahead to make your application stand out. To have your users say, wow, this meets my needs, this makes my life easier, I like this developer. Our platform has taken an approach to basically provide great capabilities in the UI, documents, and media space. And we're basically making it possible for people to use the same set of technologies and same set of services regardless of what kind of application they're building. whether it's UI, documents, media, or a combination of those. Today, how many of you work with designers? And probably mostly in the web space? There's also some designers that work in the UI space. We think that there's a major problem today in that designers and developers aren't able to work together as well as they need to. We want to make it so that developers that have UI sensibilities have more power. We want to make it so that developers that work with designers have more power. And so when you build an application, you're not automatically limited by the platform you choose and how rich the experience can be. With a little more investment of design thought, you're able to go ahead and build great-looking experiences and great usable experiences. I'm going to show you a demonstration of something called Woodgrove Financial. It's a prototype that just shows you some of the ways that you can go ahead and use Windows Presentation Foundation. And this is one of the things that customers get really excited about. WPF allows you to go ahead and visualize information in new ways. So rich data visualization is definitely a great feature. So I'll go ahead and launch Woodgrove Financial. First I will make sure I'm sharing it for the crowd out there in the world. So Woodgrove Finance Explorer here is an application that is making it easier for an end user to go ahead and analyze finances and understand how small caps, large caps, mid caps, and how different sectors are doing. Now typically you might see this information in tabular form. Here we have both tabular form along with a chart that represents it in an interesting way. One of the nice things about this, though, is it's also an interactive chart. So I'm able to go ahead and mouse over one of these bars. It'll go ahead and tell me, hey, I'm dealing with mid-cap and technology, how much it's grown. It will also let me go ahead and mouse over the list box items, and it will show me the corresponding columns. So this is just one example of a new media type that we're making easier to use in Windows. So 3D content. It was not very difficult for somebody to go ahead and integrate a 3D model of a chart and build some interactivity. So when you mouse over, you're able to go ahead and react to that. So much like you're dealing with 2D objects, you can go ahead and deal with some 3D objects. And if you wanted to go ahead and change the rendering to make it green or yellow or red, you're able to go do that quite easily. So the user is able to go ahead and rotate around. When they right-click, they can go ahead and compare it to other performances. They can look at the Dow Jones sector. So this is one example of how you can go ahead and make better data visualization with WPF. If I switch over to dollar change, it'll go ahead and show me a different way of looking at the information. So clearly, think of your applications, think of how people are looking at information. A lot of the things I'll be showing you today can be used to go ahead and represent information in better ways, so your users will be more productive and be able to get the right information more quickly. Now we've got a lot of technologies, and I can drill deep into a lot of these things. I'm not going to have time today to drill deep into each of these things, but I am going to go ahead and demo a bunch of these technologies that we have in Windows Presentation Foundation and just talk about some of the key concepts. We have 5 or 6 follow-on talks, a number of hands-on labs, and additionally some chalk talks, and we're in the booth all week. We'd love to drill deeper into all these technologies. So we start with a new media integration layer. So Windows Presentation Foundation is basically part of .NET Framework 3.0. I don't know if you saw the announcement a few days ago on Silma's blog. Basically, we formally were branding this WinFX, and basically Windows Presentation Foundation, Windows Communication Foundation, Workgroup Foundation, and InfoCard. I forget the new name for that. There's a new name. All those things are now you add that all to .NET Framework 2.0, and now you have .NET Framework 3.0. So if you hear the .NET Framework 3.0 term, you know that we've just added a number of new innovative technologies to .NET Framework 2.0. One of the great places we're innovating on our team is in the media integration layer. What we've done is we've taken a look at how Windows has rendered for the last 20 years using the underpinnings, GDI. And GDI has been around for 20 years, and people have built fantastic applications on top of it. And they'll continue to go ahead and run forever. But what we've done is we put next to it another system called the media integration layer. If you've seen some of the Vista demos last night where you were seeing the rotation through things and the new Alt tab, all those capabilities are provided by the media integration layer. So we've got a bunch of new content types here, great 2D, great 3D content, vector graphics, multimedia, imaging and effects. I'll go through a number of those. We also have a number of base services. XAML I'll go into a little bit later. XAML stands for the Extensible Application Markup Language. What we've done is we've taken a look at Windows and said, well, it'd be really nice if you could go ahead and use markup and code just like you can do when you're programming ASP.NET or HTML. So we're allowing people, although they don't need to use markup and code, we're allowing people to go do that. They could stay all in code if they'd like. We've got a lot of the great fundamentals as well built in, great accessibility, great support for lots of input devices, great tablet support built in, great inking. I just played a great tic-tac-toe example on the web the other day that Sean Van Ness posted. And we've got a great property system that enables style sheets, animations, data binding, and other things like that. I'll drill into document services and user interfaces services in the demo, so let's just jump into it. So this is a technology montage. We're going to dig into all the new capabilities that WPF gives us. Okay, so this is just an application, a WPF application, and I've got a bunch of tabs across the top, and I'm going to drill into each one of these demos. You'll notice that there's some nice transitions between these things. We're using some nice just animations to navigate between these pages, etc. So I'm going to start with what most people use when they're building applications, and those are controls. There's a lot of requirements for having great controls, but there's a lot of ways we can improve the controls of today as well. So first of all, Windows has gone ahead and developed some great controls over the years, and people have come to expect certain behavior. When you press the space bar, it does something. When you press enter, when you up and down, we've preserved all of that. We also want to go ahead and have a bunch of the great basic controls. So checkboxes, radio buttons, nothing fancy there. Sliders, a lot of controls beyond what I show here as well. Expanders, there you go. Now, this is a hint of the first little bit of flexibility that you have here. Is that basically, inside of any control, you can go ahead and have kind of whatever content you'd like to have. So I'll go into the File menu, and here we go. We've got LineCat again. We'll go down to the list box. We've got a bunch of list box items. But here, we actually have an image and text. But it's not hard-coded to only allow you to have an image and text. If I want to have a video and a button, you can have it. So you can go ahead and have arbitrary nesting and rendering of elements. And that's kind of what people are used to on the web with ASP.NET. They go ahead and choose a repeater, and the repeater has a bunch of elements, and they have great visualization. So we do that, but then we also have a great interactive control there that you're able to deal with. We've taken some controls and added great new functionality. Text in a box with misspelling, period. So that's a text box with one property set on it to say, please check the spelling. So we'll go ahead and correct that. We also have tab controls with rich content as well, and all these things. There we go. So controls, we've got a rich set of controls with rich functionality. The next thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and we allow you to have rich different content models inside of them. The next thing we want to talk about is the branding and styling of these things. So by default, they look like Windows. But we want people to have the flexibility to have their own branding. A corporation could go ahead and, for their internal applications, have a certain brand, certain style. A corporation with their external-facing applications could also do the same thing. This branded button here, I didn't need to go write a new control. You notice a nice subtle fade away. I didn't need to go build a new control. All I needed to do was change the styling. In fact, you can get carried away. Please don't. Please don't get carried away. But you can. There's a button fish here. So I go ahead and mouse over it, and it's got the nice little animation effect. I click on it, and whoa. Now, remember I said we could have anything inside of a control. Well, this is a button inside of a button with two different styles. So not something that most people are going to do, but it's nice that you can. So there we go. We can go ahead and have mouse effects, etc. So I said earlier, you don't need to build new controls here. One of the things we've done is we've made it so that the interactivity and the programming model of controls is separate from the rendering and some of the interactivity. So people are able to go ahead and build a control and say it has a click button, a click event, and it has a property that represents whether it's pressed or not. And a designer can go ahead and say, well, when this thing is true over here, I want you to make it look like this. And they'll work in markup and with tools that deal with markup, not with code. So we think that's a great advancement. So controls, rich interactive controls, a rich content model, and great styling capabilities give you a great platform there. But you might be saying, I have a lot of controls already, and I've been building Windows Forms applications. And I just want to show you that there's a talk right after this that talks about building Windows Forms applications that set you up for success if you'd like to move to WPF someday. But we've got great integration set up between Windows Presentation Foundation and Windows Forms. So this is a WPF list box over here, and we're data binding into Data Grid View, I think this is called, a Windows Forms control that you guys should be very familiar with. And we're hosting that right inside of here. And you can do the opposite as well. Inside of a Windows Forms environment, you can go ahead and host WPF content as well. It doesn't stop there, actually. So there's a talk that Nick Kramer's giving this week that's talking about MFC and Win32 interop. We can go ahead and host HWinds, and HWinds can host us, and we can also host web pages, and web pages can host us. So there's three main angles to interop there: Windows Forms, HWinds, and web pages. So one of the most annoying things about applications that I use is when they don't give me control over how big they are, and they don't use that space well. A lot of times, so I'll use Windows XP as a scenario here. Windows XP has a photo download control. It doesn't let me resize the dialog at all. It doesn't let me zoom in on the pictures at all. And I'm not able to use all the screen real estate I have. And they did that because they weren't able to, they didn't have the time to develop the resizing functionality because they had to build a lot of it themselves. So we realized that laying out applications has been tough. Windows has pretty much absolute positioning. Windows Forms added some nice docking and anchoring. The web has text flow. The web has tables. We wanted to go ahead and provide all of those things, and also a flexible system so other people could do interesting things. So we've got a set of panels. We've got a layout system, and we've got a set of panels. You can see the name down here at the bottom. This is a stack panel, and it's got an orientation property of horizontal. So it takes these rectangles, and it just goes ahead and stretches them vertically with however much space I give this. So if I went ahead and resized a window or a grid or some pane, it'd go ahead and resize. Now you'll see animations when I click here. Those animations, those don't come for free in our V1. You've got to do a little bit of code if you want to go ahead and have those effects, but they're all possible with a little bit of code. Here we have a stack panel, and the stack panel is vertical. So we've got the same children inside, and once again, it's constrained here as I resize. So layout like this enables you to go ahead and build resizable experiences. So this is called Wrap Panel, and I've got it wrapping things horizontally. So this would have been a great thing for the Windows team to go ahead and build for the Photos app, right? They can go ahead and just use Wrap Panel, have a bunch of rectangles. Inside of those rectangles, they might have the photo and a little description of the file name and a checkbox. But it's really easy to go ahead and compose these things together then and build a resizable solution. So Wrap Panel also has an orientation property. Oops, that didn't do much, did it? And it's able to go ahead and wrap to the available space. So you're able to go build these user interfaces that work the way your users work. If you wanted to build something like Outlook that has a panel on the left and a reading pane and menus, you might use dock panels to go ahead and dock things to the left, and then with the available space, dock things to the top and bottom, etc. So dock panel gives you that capability. And Grid is a great one as well. Grid is a new one. Grid is interesting in that you don't need to go ahead and order doesn't really matter for the children, and nesting you don't nest at all. You go ahead and basically define a bunch of rows and columns and define a bunch of controls, and you assign those controls to certain columns and rows. So a designer is able to go ahead and flexibly change the way your layout works. And you can go ahead and make it so that as your window resizes, you take advantage of all the appropriate real estate. Each row or column basically sizes to content size, to a proportional size shared with the rest, or a fixed size. So layout, one of the great uses of layout is going to be for building localizable applications that resize when your text size changes, or just giving the user more control. One of the technologies that developers get extremely excited about with WPF is the data binding support. You see two different representations of a bunch of dates here on the left and the right. On the left, you see a list box. And I didn't put text in there. I didn't put list box items with text in there. I actually took a datetime object, a CLR datetime object, and put a bunch of them in there. And it's great. It's a list box. I can multiple select things. That's all great. But my application wanted to go ahead and have a richer way of representing that same information. So we just customized a little bit of how should a datetime look. Well, we said we'd like to have some lines in there, and we'd like to emphasize the date, because oftentimes my data entry people are picking the wrong date. And so I want to go ahead and emphasize the date. It's usually the same month. So let's go ahead and do that. So Windows Presentation Foundation gives you a great way to do that with something called data templates. It's very similar to repeaters in ASP.NET. You're able to go ahead and decide how this works. Now, as you work with this control, one of the things you'll notice is I can arrow through, and I didn't need to write any code for this. I can multiple select, because this is just a list box. I've changed how my children are arranged. I said, use the wrap panel, please, to arrange my children. And I've changed how my children look. So you're able to go ahead and drastically change the way your applications look, the way your data is represented, to really solve the problem for the user. Think of the best way it can be represented, and you likely can go ahead and do that. So think of the things that will be most leveraged to make your user's experience better. Kevin Moore has a talk later this week that's going to go deeper into data binding. It'll show more than just data templates. It'll show how you bind to data sources and update data sources and a number of other things. I recommend the talk highly. One of those other great media types that we have support for is vector graphics. So actually, you've been watching vector graphics all this time. When we were showing you buttons and list boxes and all of these things, all of this user interface is scalable. It's not hard-coded sizes. If I resize windows, everything can scale. So this is an example of vector graphics representing a program manager. This program manager can zoom in and zoom out. And so as your applications now need to work on different systems that have different dots per inch and different resolutions, vector graphics meet that need. Vector graphics can also spin, skew, rotate, animate. You can overlay vector graphics on top of each other. There might be a lot of interesting uses of this. You can go ahead and have a map and put customer data on top of the map. I think that was in the keynote last night, right? You can do a bunch of things with there. You can also go ahead and then programmatically change little bits of the vector graphics. So you can go ahead and data bind that and have it show up a certain color if the things are in a certain range. You can animate it, or just show bad-looking hair. So what you're seeing here is kind of a theme of we've taken a look at all the different presentation platform technologies, and we've asked ourselves, what can we do to go ahead and make it significantly better or incrementally better. And together, you end up with a platform that has a number of great benefits. Now, in the text space, we've had subpixel clear type support in Windows XP, but that hasn't been turned on by default. We're continuing to innovate in this area by supporting something called natural width clear type. So it just gives you better spacing between all the characters, more natural spacing, like you'd see in a newspaper, like you'd see in a magazine. And so people have a better reading experience. So we're investing a lot in research space to enable great looking text. And we're investing in Windows Vista and Office in great fonts. All these C fonts at the top come along with Windows Vista. They come with Office as well. Most of them are designed to work really well on screen and or paper. Consolus is a great example, actually, of a great developer font. It's a fixed width font. You can actually use this today. If you have Visual Studio and if you do a lot of coding, you can go download this. If you go to my blog, I just blogged with a pointer to it this morning. So go to the first slide here, robrelia.com/blog, and I've got a link over to, I think, Aaron Martin's post about downloading Consolus and using it in your development. The Windows SDK also has a bunch of great fonts. But one of the things you'll see later on, I'm going to show a demonstration of a New York Times Reader application. You'll see that applications can actually take advantage of their fonts. So you can go ahead and download fonts with applications. So you don't need to be constrained to Georgia and Times New Roman and Arial and those kind of fonts. You can go ahead and take advantage of rich sets of fonts that people do a great job designing for your branding, for your usability, for great reading, for all those reasons. Now, take a look at the first characters here. The capital characters, they change as this types in. So that's a feature called contextual alternatives. There's a bunch of fonts that have this feature where if they're next to another character that they can look better at, they'll go ahead and be more readable, look more elegant. And those are called contextual alternatives. And that's just one of the many open type features that we're supporting now with our text support in WPF. So text makes your text very readable, but really unless we put it together and provide some great reading support, this is really what it's all about. People process a lot of information, be it email, be it web, be it documents, be it your applications. People process information all the time. The more readable you can make this, the happier they're going to be. So this is a real document here called Cocoa and Chocolate. And one of the things I'm going to demonstrate for you is just the ability to go ahead and let the user decide how it's rendered. So the user can choose to scale down the font. The user can choose to scale up the font. Notice that in one case it had 2 columns, and then it realizes, oh, I don't need 2 columns anymore. Let's go to 1 column. So we pay attention to line length to make sure that it's very readable. We allow you to go ahead and add annotations. Watch me animate this text. We probably could do it. I'm going to go ahead and add a text annotation, and I'll say, what is this? And I'll go ahead and do that. If I go page down to the next page and come back, it's still there. I can close the app. My application could save those annotations. They could be shared across different people. You can do a lot of great sharing and annotation work. Let me scale back up a little bit and just show you. I can also let the user resize the window here. So if you have a really widescreen monitor, oftentimes if you're formatting text for 800 by 600, your users aren't very happy. You're not allowing them to use their system. So in order to go ahead and build this, you just go ahead and build a flow document, and it has paragraph tags and bold tags and italic tags and those types of things. It has styling capabilities. And then you go ahead and load it inside of a document viewer. Chris Hahn is going to drill deeper into both text and reading, I believe on Thursday. Later this week. I've got a slide with it later. But he'll be able to drill much deeper into this. So oftentimes, reading is great, but I also want to print out something. How many people are happy with the printing support that they have in their applications today? I have 0 hands. That's amazing. Oh, all right, why is that? Anyway? Is it because you haven't invested in it, or it takes too much investment, or there's no support in the platform, or not good enough support in the platform? Or just, yeah, I see some heads nodding there. Well, we've got some great printing APIs as part of .NET Framework 3.0, as part of WPF. You can go ahead and print, and you can also use pretty much a similar code path to persist to a file. So if I want to go ahead and click this button here, it's going to prompt me for a dialog. I'll go ahead and say, I'd like to save this document, and I'll call it Cocoa. And it's saving this as an XPS document. XPS is new in this Windows Vista wave, and it stands for XML Paper Specification. Cocoa.xps now is a file that I can go ahead and double-click. It'll open up in the browser in an integrated viewer and allow me to have a paginated reading experience. So this is kind of the best of both worlds. I had content that was flowable and readable, but if I want to go ahead and share it with somebody that doesn't have the same great application I have, I could go ahead and persist it to this file, send it over to them, and do very interesting things. One of the other great capabilities here is XPS is just it's basically built on top of the Open Packaging Convention. You can go ahead and rename this file to have a little fun, and just rename it to zip so we can edit it a little bit. Oops, you can't do that while you're viewing it too, which I understand, I guess. We'll go ahead and rename this to zip so we can just manipulate it a little bit. So the Open Packaging Conventions is a new technology standard that XML paper specifications is built on top of. And so are all of Office's new file formats. DocX, XLSX, all those new formats are built on top of the Open Packaging Convention. So I can go ahead and drill into documents. I'll just show you that somewhere under here, there's a bunch of pages. And I won't go very deeply into this. Hello. Well, I don't need to do that. Sorry about the font. So here, actually, it's a shame that this is the first XAML you're going to see. I should have done it differently. This is really hideous-looking XAML, right? I mean, it's got a lot of stuff, all this text. This is really low-level stuff. XPS is basically the file format that's being sent to printers. And so it's got individual characters everywhere. And basically, so that's leveraging some of the same capabilities of WPF, but just a subset of those things. So now I can go, the interesting thing here is this zip file, though, I could go put other interesting data in here as well if I wanted to. Maybe it's interesting to have a printed representation of something, but you want to have the XML file that originally was the data that you printed. Maybe your application would like to go ahead and process that as well as the printing. So a lot of times people send something like a financial statement, and it'd be nice to have the Excel data along with it, or a CSV table with it, or an XML representation of that data, besides just the visual representation. Now, a lot of times in keynotes, what gets mentioned is animations, 3D, lots of other support. So some great media. We've got a lot of great new technologies like that. Let's take a look here. Let's see, media. I had to kill the sound because of technical difficulties with our broadcast. Imagine them talking. Well, in fact, maybe I'll just use subtitles because of this unforeseen circumstance. Now, you'll notice we've got really great compositing of text with fonts on top of video. And we can do things like pop-up videos if you'd like. So in a second here, there'll be an interesting thing I can click on. Here we go. Oh yes, I'd like to find out more about the metric system. We animate that away. It's got a nice little reflection over here. I can learn all about the metric system because, and actually you guys should all read for a little while too, because I think we're pretty far behind. I think they tried this when I was a kid. But you can imagine that people could build some great training applications like this, some great presentation capabilities that have interesting information. You can composite it all on top of the video. You can mix it and match it however you'd like. And that's our media support. So we have a media element, and that media element can go ahead and tie in with our animation system, so you can do things like that, synchronize timelines, and you can synchronize a bunch of different things with a timeline or with code. The next major media type we've added that I want to walk through here in the montage is 3D. So you saw a quick look at this with Woodgate Financial, the financial application I showed you earlier. Now here what you see is 2 list boxes and a 3D model. Would you be surprised if I said this was the list box? I would, yeah. This is the list box down here. So I go ahead and mouse over, and I'm keyboarding around my list box here. I think I just used a stack panel. I've got a video inside there if I want. I've got a stack panel that's arranged horizontally inside my list box. I can go ahead and just change that via style. I go ahead and mouse over this thing. I want to put something on the inner cover as well. I'll go ahead and data bind that to this guy. There it is. So WPF allows you to go ahead and represent lots of interesting data, whether it's user interfaces, multimedia, audio, 2D data, 3D data. Here we're allowing you to go ahead and do simple 3D models. And these simple 3D models have you can go ahead and use brushes to go draw them, to draw on them. You can go use image brushes, you can go use solid colors, you can use linear gradients. Here what we're doing is using a visual brush. We're data binding to these 2 list boxes, we're getting the visuals that are selected down there, and we're binding that via visual brush right onto the 3D surface. I've got a little more interactivity in this model. You can go ahead and build interactivity and animations in. Got a nice little experience here with my CD. So really, it's just another capability that is opening up some of the possibilities about how you can present information, how you can present items in the real world. Not everybody should use 3D. Please don't use it unless it's a good use. It's much like fonts once people first had font control. They went a little crazy. Try not to go a little crazy. Experiment, but don't go overboard. So this has just been a walkthrough, a set of features. Controls, we showed how there was great rich controls, a rich content model, and rich styling. Interop, we showed how you could interoperate with Windows Forms, with the web, with HWinds. Layout, we showed you how you could build UI that lets the user be in control. Data, we showed you how you could go ahead and visualize information in richer ways to make your users make fewer mistakes, to let your users understand data more quickly. Vectors graphics allow you to go ahead and draw ellipses and lines and paths to represent all sorts of things and overlay them, program with them, deal with the user and have interactivity on those vectors. We've got great text support and great reading support. We persisted to an XPS file, shared that with our friends. We dug into it to see what other kind of data we could put in there. And we saw some of the great media and 3D support. I hope you think, yes, there's lots of new capabilities. And I hope you saw a few things there that you could go ahead and use. So this platform that we have deals with a lot of different media types. The interesting thing is we also have a bunch of services, the data binding services, the animation services, style sheets, inheritance of properties. All of those kind of things are usable in all of those different systems. So once you learn how to animate a control across the screen, and you use a tool to do that, you can go do the same thing for a vector graphic. So you're able to leverage your knowledge. In the past, a lot of times people had to go ahead and have, they would have islands of, they drop a control into the middle of their application. And oftentimes that control has a different programming model inside of it than the host application. And so you end up with this impedance mismatch, and you can't go ahead and you've got to learn new things about that. So if we have a set of consistent services, you're able to go ahead and leverage your learning and really go much further. So I mentioned earlier XAML. XAML's what enables a lot of different tools to work with these different media types. There's 3D modeling tools that know how to work with XAML. There's 2D vector graphics tools that know how to deal with XAML. We'll take a look at XAML in a moment when we go into some demos. But XAML provides the connectivity for these different types of users. In the past, form designer technologies have persisted the form, your buttons and text boxes, out to code, not to markup. And that's meant that it's not very easy for another tool to go ahead and parse in Visual Basic or C# and understand where it is and change it. So there's in Windows Forms, there's one designer around, maybe two. I think I met somebody once that wrote one too. So there aren't a lot of designers that can deal with Windows Forms because it's code persisted. Markup persistence enables an ecosystem of tools to deal with their specialties, 2D graphics, etc. So to reach out to different designers and developers, we realized we're going to need a different set of tools for designers and developers. We've got a new suite of products called Microsoft Expression that is going to help you do that. Designers would use Expression Graphic Designer to do core visuals, to do vector graphics and images, etc. They'll use Expression Interactive Designer to deal with the interaction of the application. What happens when I mouse over this? What happens when I navigate here? And they'll work with developers who are using Visual Studio to go ahead and work on the same application. The developers will focus more on the business logic, the programming that's necessary, and together often, these folks will be able to build great experiences. We've got a bunch of third-party tools as well. MobileForms Aurora is another graphical designer. I think they've just shipped another beta, and they've got some great new support. You can go to see them down on the floor all this week. Electric Rain has a tool called XAM 3D that imports 3D models and allows you to go ahead and get them into the XAML world real easily. So there's a lot of great support there. Oftentimes, these designers and developers, one of the problems is that they're talking using different file formats. Designers will go ahead and save an image and show it to the developer and say, go do something like this. And the developer might have to cut that up and put it into something, or maybe they go ahead and try to recreate it. The developer might go ahead and say, well, a yellow combo box, and it shows selection, and it's yellow. How's that? And the designer's going to say, well, no, that's not the look I was looking for. And so maybe if we change what they're talking through, if we give them a lingua franca of XAML and allow their tools to communicate through XAML, they'll be able to communicate more easily. In fact, you'll be able to have the designer do more of the work in the actual product, if that makes sense to you. So now the designer and developer are working with the same language and able to go ahead and get greater benefits. So the designer typically will be using something like Expression, and the developer, a development tool like Visual Studio. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate some of these products. Now, WPF is beta, of course. It's just reached its beta 2 stage. Visual Studio support for Orcus has not yet reached that stage. And Expression Interactive Designer is a little farther behind as well. But I'm going to go ahead and start building an application inside of Visual Studio. We'll see how these tools can work together today, and these are going to grow together in the future. So inside of Visual Studio, I'll do a File, New Project. Now if you want to start using .NET Framework 3.0, you need to install the beta. There's a Windows SDK as well, and then there's also extensions for Visual Studio. Visual Studio extensions for WinFX, they are still called up till now. Once you've installed those, you'll have a new tab inside of Visual Studio there under C# or Visual Basic Projects. That is the Windows WinFX branch. Inside of here, you're able to go ahead and choose between building a Windows application or a web browser application if you wanted to run in the browser. I'm going to go ahead and just build Tech Ed Morning, a Windows application. It's going to go ahead and create a new project. Now this project not only has C# in this example, but it also has XAML. So it's got XAML and code behind files that are C#. If I look at window1.xaml, that's the main window. I'll go ahead and expand that. If it gives me my mouse, here we go. So window1.xaml has a code behind file, the main application. You can share resources inside of app.xaml here, and here's my form. I'm going to go ahead and just use some of the great layout capabilities that I've got, and I'm going to lay out a grid, and I'm going to go ahead and define a few columns here. I'll go ahead and drop a label up on the top. Whoops, there we go. And down below, I'm actually going to drop a grid. Sorry. Inside of that, I'm going to go ahead and define a couple rows and columns. This is what happens when you work with the grid layout, but you can work with other layouts as well. Inside of that, I'll go ahead and drop a couple labels. Oops, here we go. You can tell it can tell where things are going, which rows and columns you're dropping things into. And then I'll drop in a few text boxes. And then I'll quickly format them. Let me select all those guys. One of the nice things about being aligned in a grid is you can go ahead and arrange yourself relative to that grid. So if I go down to the margin property, I can go ahead and set a margin, say, of 4. And let's go ahead and just run our amazing application here. So I'll press F5. And there we go. We've got an application. And it's got certain sizing behavior. Let's see what it got us by default. So I probably want to change this behavior. Right now the label is aligned left. But the text box grows, and it deals well when I go ahead and grow this. So let me just go ahead and quickly align those to the right by changing horizontal alignment. Be right. And there we go. So that's the kind of thing you can do. Now inside of the Visual Designer here, which is codenamed Cider, you've got a design surface. You also have a XAML surface, so you can go ahead and take a look at the XAML. I'm sorry, I've got to crank the font a tiny bit here as well. So let's walk through a little bit of that XAML just so we can have a better experience in that XPS rendition of XAML. So XAML is just a markup language that's much like Visual Basic or C#. It knows how to create objects, and it knows how to set properties. So here I'm creating a tree of objects. I've got a window, and the window comes from a certain namespace, XAML, WinFX 2006, XAML presentation. So basically this namespace has all of our controls inside of it. I have a title on the window, and I've got a height and a width. Now remember, if this scares you, you don't need to be here. You don't ever need to go to the markup world. You're able to stay in the designer. And especially if the tool's mature, you'll be able to stay there longer and longer. So window has a child of grid, and grid is setting a property called row definitions with a collection of things, these row definitions. Now, the designer was very precise, which is good. And you notice there's a little unit here called star. Star allows me to go ahead and say, well, I'd like this to be proportional. Make 14% of it over here and 85.9% over here. And so I could go ahead and hard code those things as well. Maybe I'll change this top guy to be auto-sized. So I can manipulate it here or in the other designer. We had our label. We had a grid. This grid that was inside had 2 columns and 4 rows with different sizing. And then I had all these labels, the 4 labels and the 4 text boxes. The margins I set were 4. Most things have names, and you can programmatically deal with these things to see, via the name. I set the horizontal alignment to right for all these things, and here's the content for it. Now the text box, actually I skipped over this thing. Grid.row. That kind of looks funny, right? The period inside of an attribute name is a little bit funny. So grid was its parent's control, right? This label is right inside of a grid. Grid.row is saying, I want to set the row property that my parent might ask you for later on. And so you say grid.row, and now this parent can go ahead and interrogate its children saying, oh, what row are you, what column are you, what column span do you have, what row span you have. Now, you might ask, well, why didn't we just put row and column on every control? Why did we have to do this grid dot? We want this to be an extensible system, so anybody can go invent new layouts, new panels. And we didn't want to have to hard code a bunch of properties onto every single control in the world if they wouldn't always, I could set row and column on a button, but it wouldn't have any effect. And it doesn't have any effect setting grid.row or grid.column unless you're right inside of a grid. So these are called attached properties, and this is how you set them in markup. But that's basically what XAML is. XAML is a way to map markup straight to a set of objects. So some people call it an object instantiation language. I call it a great persistence format that different people can cooperate with. Tools, transforms, data. There's a lot of flexible things you can do if things are based in XML. I'm going to go ahead and save this project, and I'll launch Interactive Designer. So as you saw demoed yesterday in the keynote, Expression Interactive Designer is a tool that's built in WPF to target WPF. I'm going to first go ahead and just show you opening TechEd Morning, this project that I still have open over in Visual Studio. We'll open up TechEd Morning, and hey, that looks familiar. It even has my right alignment of these labels. But as the designer half of myself, I realized, wow, that was ugly. Let's go ahead and make this look a little bit better. So you can go ahead and do a lot of some of the great things you can do here include the things you can do over in Cider, but you also have new capabilities. So I might want to go ahead and pick a color and just choose some background or things like that. Or I might want to go ahead and have a linear gradient and manipulate how I'd like the brush to be and add new gradient stops. So designers can go crazy and have just the look that they like to have with their user interface. So you'll have a polished look without much work. One of the nice things you can do is you can go ahead and save these styles. So I can go down to the Properties pane. Let me zoom in a little bit in the workspace so we can see. Go down to the Properties pane. I have the background property set here, and it's set to a local value right now. I can make a new resource, and I could go put it in the application, for example, and share it with the entire application. So all forms, all whatever, I could go name this color and use it throughout. I could go set a certain style. So we've got great styling support, great resources support. So I'll just go ahead and make this something on this window. And now if I want to go ahead and make this label the same color, I can just right-click. I'll go down here and go to the background property and say Apply Resource, Brush 1, that's what I want, and there I go. I've shared that label. If I go ahead and change it in one place, it'll change in both places. So we've got some great sharing support with resources. Now you can do other crazy things here. If I go ahead and I'll just go ahead and create a new project real quickly inside of Expression. And I'll do something crazy. Like I'll go look for some vector graphics. I'll find an ellipse. I'll draw a couple ellipses. I don't know why they keep drawing. I've got to get my tools and unselect that guy. Or actually, I'll just use these guys. This is what I usually do. So you can go ahead and, wow. Let's not ship this yet. All right. So I'm going to show you a demo of animating this ellipse. They're all there. I don't know. You know, they've got this whole problem of, like, what color are they all? So they all are really there. I'm just going out of bounds a little bit. Let me go ahead and change their colors a little bit. There we go. Now I can go ahead and do interesting things when on a timeline. So if I'm a designer and I have some good sensibilities here, I can go ahead and say, well, I'd like to go ahead and record a keyframe here for this, and at 1 second, I'd like this object to be over here, and then I'm going to go ahead and say, well, this guy, I'd like to record a keyframe, and I'd like it to be over there, but I'd like to spin it around. And I can go preview that in the tool, and I guess I did that one wrong. Rectangle 2, I've got to go move it, keyframe it, move it somewhere else, rotate it, skew it, round it. There we go. So this is just a hint at what you can do here. You'll see expression products, I think, a little bit more in Robbie Ingebrigtsen's talk on Friday. He's going to talk about building great-looking applications, why it's important, and some of the great tools. He'll go into styling and resources in more depth than I've been able to. But there you get a taste of Expression Interactive Designer and Visual Studio. I'm not going to have time to drill into Expression Graphic Designer, but this is the tool where you can go ahead and create great vector art to then import into Visual Studio or into Interactive Designer. So go ahead and download. Those CTPs are all available today, so you can go ahead and get all of this if you'd like to. We'll switch back over. So we think we built a platform that has great capabilities for tools to take advantage of. We've also gone ahead and done great work with interactive media and content. You've seen video with things overlaid on top of it. You've seen great reading experiences. I want to give a quick demonstration of the New York Times demo, the Times Reader. So about a month ago, Microsoft and the New York Times announced a project that we've been working on together called the Times Reader. And it's not yet in beta stages, but it will be soon. But the Times Reader is a WPF application that's an installed application. This installed application has a great reading experience for content. So it's using some of the great flow document support that I talked about earlier. So I'll go ahead and, well, how would you like to navigate through this? Do you want to maybe scroll down for 20 pages and click on a link to go to page 2? No. You want to go ahead and sit back and enjoy the paper, have a great reading experience. I'm going to use a right arrow to go to the next article. And down here in the bottom right, you'll notice that there's article left or right and page up or down. You can just use 4 keys to read the paper. So here, what you can rent. I'm down arrowing to go within that article. Keep on reading. We've got an ad that's been placed in there. Here's another article. I pushed down again and it went to the next article. I can go ahead and zoom in on the article. You'll notice that the pictures dynamically place themselves and size nicely for what they're given. So here, it won't fit on the first page, so it goes to the second page. So if I go down to the article, there I can go ahead and read it. So the New York Times is really excited about this, and we're really excited to see them take advantage of some of the technology. You look for a beta not too far down the line. They think that it's going to make people more excited to read online. And people aren't very excited to read online. It's, the content is great. There's lots of great content. But the experience isn't great. And WPF is making it possible to vastly improve the experience. There's a recording that Kevin Gierstad just did recently that demos this more fully. I blogged a pointer to that, and Chris Hahn's going to go into this deeper as well, and also go into reading and tech support, like I said earlier, later this week. So I'm not going to do any demos of this today. This is a little further out there. But people might ask, and they might say, well, that's great capabilities, but some of my applications need to reach out beyond our organization and reach out, and I've got to be able to reach with different browsers and platforms. How can I leverage some of this great stuff for them? We've got something called Windows Presentation Foundation Everywhere, codenamed WPFE, and that's going to provide a small download runtime that will run in different browsers and different platforms that will leverage a lot of the same XAML content. So it'll be XAML plus some script plus some managed code, if you'd like that as well. So this is an exciting effort that we're making. It's a little bit further out, but please go search and learn more about it on the web if you're interested in WPFE. So Windows Forms continues to be a great platform. We work great together, and we want to make sure that you're able to leverage all the investments you've done there, and that you continue to make investments there in a number of areas. We're a version 1 platform, and so we are not as refined as we'd like to be. We'll refine ourselves more and more, and we'll become easier and easier to use, and we'll fill in the gaps that we have in V1. The great thing is, the direction is go use .NET, build great applications, focus on the user. When it's right for you to use WPF, use it. When it's right for you to use Windows Forms, use it. And you can go ahead and architect your applications in such a way that it's easy to go switch and change those things, and easy for you to isolate your business logic from your UI. Scott Morrison has a talk downstairs, I think in 153, right after this talk, that's talking about how to go ahead and prepare your Windows Forms applications for that. So Windows Forms continues to be the best application platform for line of business applications. Although we've got some great capabilities, it may be that you just want to go ahead and use the control of us inside of your Windows Forms application. It may be that it's okay to go move all the way to a WPF hosted application and whatever. You can go ahead and choose based on your needs and based on your experiments. WPF applications allow you to go ahead and build a great look and feel and great user experience. And when you're reaching out to platforms that don't have .NET 3.0 installed on it, then, of course, using the technologies you've been using in the past, ASP.NET, Atlas, and in the future, perhaps WPFE, to deal with those reach client needs. We've got a bunch of talks this week. They're posted right here. If you go to the URL, I've got additional information as well. If you go to robrelia.com/events/TechEd2006, I list these. I also list the different chalk talks, and there's 4 hands-on labs. I also give you the location where all of us are going to be wearing these silly orange shirts. We're in the far left corner of the dev lab, so just kind of go far left when you go down into the booth area. We'd love to talk with you all week. I'll be here for a little while here answering questions in a moment, and then I'll be down there following this talk. We'd love to see you provide a great experience, whether it's in the browser or out of the browser, and really differentiate your applications. I'd love to hear that you're becoming more productive with WPF, and tell me where you're not. You can go ahead and begin building on .NET Framework 3.0 today with the Beta 2, and as Vista releases, we'll release both on Windows Vista, Windows XP, and on Server 2003. So they've got a lot of great capabilities. Take a look and get yourself ready for what you'd like to do there. Got a lot of great online resources, and please make sure you fill out your evaluation to win me an Xbox. No. Please give me your Xbox. Anyway, so thanks very much. I'll be taking questions for 10 or 15 minutes. Thank you. Why don't you go to the mic, and I'll take questions for, I think I've got another 15 minutes. So why don't you go to the mic, please, and then I'll hang out here for a little while afterwards. Can I go back a few slides? Which slide would you like? The other talks. Yes, I will go there. So, Kevin. Yeah, here. Okay, yes. Can we have the mics on for the question, people, please? Go ahead and try. No?
Yeah, you had talked about the addition of WinFX to .NET 2.0 being .NET 3.0. Are there other additions to .NET 3.0 beyond that?
It was just a branding change, really. Basically, anything that we used to talk about WinFX as being .NET Framework 2.0 plus plus WPF, Windows Presentation Foundation, WCF, the Windows Communication Foundation, Indigo, WF, Windows Workflow Foundation, not known as WWF, we get sued, and InfoCard. Does anybody know the real name of it? CardSpace is the new name for InfoCard, which is authentication on the web technology to make people safer and happier. So those are the four main technologies that are added to .NET Framework 2.0 and make up .NET Framework 3.0.
Okay. Does 3.0 also include enhancements and fixes and so on, or is that just going to be service?
.NET Framework, the question is, did we fix anything in the base class libraries of .NET and .NET Framework 3.0? No, and we're using .NET Framework 2.0, so if you already have .NET Framework 2.0 installed on machines, when you install .NET Framework 3.0, it'll be half the cost, download size and install size, those kind of things. So it just adds on top of .NET Framework 2.0. There will be service packs of that, of course, in the future, but not in this bunch.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, is there a question over there?
As an XP developer using Visual Studio 2005, Windows XP, what can I see on my current platform as a feature type as I play through the betas? Do I need to have a different operating system be running Vista Beta or something to be able to see the benefit?
Okay, the question is, what operating system should you be using? So you can use Windows XP, you can use Windows Vista, you can use Server 2003 if you wanted to as well, although most people will probably be using XP or Windows Vista. The main thing that you'll want to do is make sure you've got a decent video card if you want to go ahead and experiment with 3D and animations and all those types of things. Those require higher end video cards, really DX9 capable cards. So if you have a machine that's Vista capable, just go ahead and take a look on the web, and it talks about the different requirements for those machines. Those will run best. We also will degrade the software rendering if your 3D card isn't good enough. But Windows XP, Windows Vista, both should be great development platforms there. Windows Vista adds a better display driver model, so that if you're running a lot of WPF applications, it's able to share those resources better. But that's the major difference there. Yes, I was demonstrating on Windows XP today, mostly because Live Meeting had this limitation right now with incompatibility. But yes, it runs on XP today. Thank you. Yes?
Just kind of a follow-up question to that. You said you need a pretty good video card. Any idea when Virtual PC is going to emulate a better video card?
That's a great question. I don't know when Virtual PC will have a better video card, but I'll find out, and I'll post it up to my blog or off the link of the site. Virtual PC. Great. Thanks. Another question?
Quick one. Of the fonts we're talking about, how many of them have to be Unicode?
I believe they're all Unicode. I'd be really surprised if they're all international ready fonts. So yeah, they're all great fonts, and there's a great Asian font, Kevin Moore is telling me, and what's the name of it? Oh, they all just have great Asian support as well. Okay, great. Thanks, Kevin. Yes?
Just a quick, what about ASP.NET? Is it still separate, or it's Windows only for Windows and ASP.NET stays on Triple Web? There is no correlation.
ASP.NET?
Yeah,
is it still separate? So yes, ASP.NET and WPF are two great development technologies. One of them helps you reach out to any client that has an HTML rendering surface, an HTML browser. WPF, while it can build applications that run in the browser or standalone, the browser's machine still needs to have .NET Framework 3.0 installed. So we don't magically convert ourselves into HTML content down on the client, but ASP.NET is all about providing a great programming model on the server that can go ahead and project to almost any browser out there. So that's really the difference. Is when you want to reach out, you go ahead and use ASP.NET. When you want to go a little further, you use Atlas to go ahead and have better interactivity. When you want to go all the way with the best experience possible, WPF is gonna provide that. Thanks.
You mentioned that there was a control that you can host what you've done in Windows Forms. And
Yes, you can. Well, you're hosting. You've got a Windows Forms application. You want to host us? Is that or vice versa?
particularly vector objects. I was wondering if you tested any kind of performance on that, like hundreds of vector objects. If there's any kind of performance testing you guys have done?
I don't know if we've specifically tested that scenario. The Crossbow team was the nickname, the code name of that team, and they tested hosting Avalon controls, and then it's really just a matter of how can you go ahead and build Avalon content and Avalon control with a bunch of children in there that are vector graphics. Now, if you're looking to have, when you choose to build vector graphics inside of WPF, you have choices. You can use the shapes. System.windows.shapes has 6 or 7 things. They're kind of like controls though, and they cost as much as controls almost. So they provide lots of interactivity, etc., but you pay for them. So you're not going to want tens of thousands of those.
Hey.
So if you have tons and tons of things, you'd want to go ahead and use drawings, which are a lower level vector primitive. But yes, there's several different layers that you could go plug into, and depending on your need for your application.
Yes, good, also.
Yes.
We're using the composite application block to build an integrated application for our work. And are there any limitations with using the workspaces from the cab inside in a combination with this, or?
Karen, do you want to? Karen works closely with that team. Karen Corbett.
You can use WinForms Interop just to go in between the two. We're currently exploring how we can support WPF with the CAB framework more natively, so to speak.
Okay. Great. Thanks. Yes.
Yes, whenever you were talking about expressions for the designer,
Expression graphic designer and expression interactive designer, EGD and EID.
we were talking about that versus the IDE access to the design. You said there was design elements that you can get to in the IDE, or you can go into the designer side and there's more things they can do. Is that all? Is there actually more stuff that you can't see in the IDE, or you have to go into XAML to
Okay, that's a great question. So basically, both designers have certain capabilities in their designing surface, certain layout capabilities, et cetera, and those are continually improving. So if I have a grid, each CTP that these products have, their grid editing gets a little bit better and better. They've probably exposed most of those features, but Visual Studio doesn't have an animation timeline. Expression Interactive Designer does. Now you could go ahead and go into the XAML in either of those worlds and play with animations that already existed or add them yourself. But it's basically just a matter of focus. Expression Interactive Designer is going to expose the tools and functionality that designers and people working in interactive design need, and Cider, or inside of Visual Studio, is going to go ahead and do developer-oriented things. Please tell us what you'd like those things to be if you don't see us going in the right direction.
Okay, and just as a follow-up, if you're in the IDE, say the designer goes in and does some of this animation stuff and saves it, if you get the latest of that, the IDE renders and shows the animation type stuff too, or?
The IDE renders all the things in their initial time zero state. And you can't get a preview or anything like that, but when you run the application, you see all the animations. So, yes, thanks for coming.
With respect to Windows Presentation Foundation, is there any changes in how we debug these applications? Is there any type of ramifications with debugging, things of that nature, since it's moving from a more code-based model to a more markup model?
Do you speak from experience, or are you just questioning?
Oh, big experience.
I suspected as much. Yes, so current betas and current CTPs still have a way to go to make the debugging experience better. We have this we've introduced this new markup language, and we haven't fully plumbed through all the important debugging support. You'll see before version 1 being over, that getting a lot better. There's kind of 3 different approaches to making sure your XAML is well formed. One is great designer support. So with Cider and Sparkle, they're creating great XAML right away. So you're not going to have a runtime exception or anything like that when they do things. When you go and edit in XAML code behind, in the XAML, you could go break things there. And we have decent IntelliSense now, but we need to get a lot better there. And that's going to continue to be invested in inside of Visual Studio primarily. And then there's the compiler, the markup compiler. we're continuing to get better and better catching things, but in version 1, the markup compiler is not going to catch every possible thing. We're not able to do all that work in version 1. So sometimes you'll end up with runtime exceptions, and right now that's the hideous experience. If you end up running and you get a BAML exception or a XAML parse exception of some sort. We've done work after beta 2, after the bits that are currently released, to go ahead and drop in line numbers and offsets to make that a lot easier than it currently is. So we feel your pain. We're attacking it on a number of fronts, and we'd love feedback on those efforts. Thanks.
Hey, I have 2 questions.
Yes.
You said we can host a WP application in a browser, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Now I'm assuming that that application runs in a sandbox in a user's computer.
Yes, absolutely. It's sandboxed, and there's no prompt. I didn't mention that at all.
Okay.
Yes?
Okay. Now, can it interact with its host page?
Can it interact with its host page? Not very richly today. You can interact via URL passing of information. Cookie interaction is cookies and URLs is basically what you have. So it's limited interaction today.
Okay.
But we'd love to hear what you'd like to see there. Okay. And we plan on investing in that in the future.
Okay. So my second question is, where does this leave the smart client technology? Or is this the next smart client technology?
Yes, Windows Presentation Foundation is smart client technology for you to build great client applications that take advantage of the client. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, today we have smart client technology where it gets downloaded to the user's computer and it can contact a web service to do all its calculations and all that stuff, right?
Uh-huh.
Now, is this the next level, or is it separate from a smart client technology?
It's absolutely smart client technology. It's installable software that can take advantage of your local machine and can talk to services and get data, etc. And you've got 2 flavors of that: the installed application that installs with click once and stays updated via click once, or XBAP, so those XAML browser applications that run in the browser and are sandboxed and stay up to date all the time as well. Lauren Lavoie is going to have a talk about that on Thursday. Dev336 is going to go into that deeper, and there's a chalk talk that Karen Corby and Ashish are going to be doing, building a XAML browser application. That day is what day? Tomorrow around 4 o'clock.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Thanks for your questions. Another one over here?
Yeah, I wonder about the release plans. Will WPF, Orcus extensions, and interactive designers all be released simultaneously? And if so, will it be synchronized with release of Vista? Or?
Okay, yeah, great question. So we've announced that Vista, I believe, is shipping in November for corporate customers, and then a few months later, January or February, for customers at large, midnight show kind of thing, maybe, I don't know. And whenever that first release happens is when we are going to be releasing on the web at the same time. So we will be available for XP and Server 2003, and then of course you can get Vista if you're a corporate customer that has access to that through volume purchasing agreements, those kind of things. Probably developers get through Msdn as well, I don't know. So that's when the platform is releasing. .NET Framework 3.0 is releasing at that point. And the tools are releasing differently. So, Expression Interactive Designer is probably further along than Visual Studio Orcus is, but I'm not sure of their exact plans. But those will both be following the release. But they'll continue to ship CTP. Every time we ship the platform, they ship, and our different third parties also ship their versions so that the community can use that against the latest version. So when we ship RTM, the tools won't be RTM, but there'll be tools that will work with that RTM and be compatible with that RTM and allow you to build applications that are supportable, because it's really the compiled code that's the important thing to have released for you to be able to use it. But tools certainly help too. Thanks a lot. So I'll stick around here for a minute or two. Oh, we have one more, sorry.
I have a question. I was thinking about the debugging, and I was wondering if there are any implications as far as being able to test the presentation tier side with XAML, with doing things like NUnit or NUnit AST, traditionally doing that types of automated testing or things like that.
So I'd love to talk to you more about NUnit and other testing. We have great accessibility support and test automation support. Kevin Moore here, you can go talk in more detail. But basically, it's fully automatable for test tools. So it really doesn't matter if you use code or markup. At the point that you want to go ahead and interact with it at runtime, you're able to go ahead and talk to it through great accessibility and test automation hooks.
Oh, and as a follow-up, for the Windows WPFE, the everywhere one, it's going to be this installable module that people will download like a plugin for their web browser. Are there any considerations for 508 compliance? Working with like the federal government space, I've experienced with, you know.
Right. Oh, I'm not familiar with it's 508C. Is that right? Or I'm not sure of the exact story, but I would imagine that they're going down the right route there. I'll confirm that, and I'll post that up to my blog, or it's up to the show URL. So please check back. All right. One last one.
Sorry, one more. Just wondering if you could tell us anything about what support you have for localization.
Got very good support for localization. We've been paying attention to globalization from the beginning. We want to be able to build big chunks of Windows and other major products out of this. So we basically, there's a variety of ways people can do it. People can use string tables like they've done today if they'd like, but we recommend and have built more tools around a strategy where you code with one language. And in your XAML, you can interleave languages right in there. And we have unique identifiers on different elements within there. And then we have a tool to go ahead and strip that out and put it into kind of a tabular form. And then you can have localization processes go ahead and localize that and then merge it back into the different binary resource DLLs. Those tools are available now, and I will include a link in the show notes to the localization story. So the SDK has stuff, and I'll point you towards. Chris Hahn is the expert there, and he's here this week, and he's doing the talk on content and reading. So if you want to talk to him in person, come on by the booth. Great. All right. Thanks very much. Thanks everybody online as well.
And I'd like to extend a special thank you to Rob for presenting today. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes today's Tech Ed Webcast. Thanks for joining us. You may now disconnect from the audio portion of this conference.